Why are some African American women so angry at the whole friggin' world?
So I recently asked why many Black women are angry. Now, to be clear, I did not say most Black women are angry, and I did not say all Black women are angry. I said many. Let me start off by saying that before y'all start jumping down my throat. If we are all honest, we have probably all had our fair share of experiences with just salty, stank attitude Black women.
The level of disrespect that I personally have received from certain, I don't even want to say it's a socioeconomic class, but just certain African American women of a certain mindset.
And in general, there is very much this negative stereotype associated with Black femininity and this idea that Black women are walking around just like with a resting bee face, right? Or just with bad energy, just mad at the whole world. And I understand that's a stereotype. That is certainly not everybody. That is not everybody's situation. And I would hate to mischaracterize all Black women as that. But again, many of us are aware that there are those of us in the community who just seem like they're always having a bad day. And it's like a trend.
There are certain personalities that should never work in customer service. One of the things I have noticed is that ghetto isn't any social economic group. Ghetto has degrees. And if you've ever went to a DMV or had to deal with the government, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I believe there are countless reasons that Black women in America specifically could be angry. There are. If you understand the history of this nation, that'll make you pretty pissed off. And then when you understand the things that have been done to divide Black men and Black women, and then when you understand even the industries right now that are still systematically targeting Black women, sex trafficking, for example, the sex trafficking industry, which disproportionately impacts Black women, there are reasons to be upset. It's actually quite healthy to experience anger when negative things happen. But how we handle that anger and what we do with that anger really does make a difference. And I think more importantly, I wanted to ask this question because I was curious whether or not there is a consistent theme or consistent things happening that many Black Americans thought was responsible for the anger and or this stereotype that for some reason still continues to be alive and well. So I don't have much else to say. I'm just going to get right into the comments and see some of what you guys have to say regarding my question. Start with some of the feedback I got on YouTube. On YouTube, some of my feedback, it says, why are many Black American women so angry? Thoughts? So let's look at some of the top comments. They want to be head of household, but want the privileges of a wife. So, okay, I'm wondering if he's referring to the impacts of the no man in the house clause, basically, where Black women specifically were incentivized to not have men in the house so that they could get money. And this was actually at the same time Black men were systematically being kept from getting stable jobs. So it was a very strategic move of the government to incentivize women through consistent income that could help them take care of the kids by saying, hey, we'll basically give you money as long as you just make sure you don't have men in the house, while at the same time Black men were being kept out of jobs so that they couldn't provide a consistent wage for their families. So it was just a very cruel devious act, quite frankly, in my opinion. And there are impacts to that because that had generational impacts. And when you have children who grew up with that, dad wasn't there, dad was far away or whatever, and you kind of get used to that, then that becomes the norm. And so I'm just curious if he's speaking specifically to that clause, or this is just more of a cultural phenomenon in general. So they're angry because they're angry. All right, this one says because of their poor decisions and the generation of Black men won't save them. I wonder if this is SYSBMer. Yeah, there are obviously women out there who've made poor decisions. Easy to make poor decisions when there isn't strong eldership around you, not strong parentage or just a strong community period. It's easier to make poor decisions. And I love Black woman as a Black man ish hard out here. Another one says, to answer your question, Shay, I would say that it's because of two main things. One, I think the Black woman who bought into the feminism mindset, both fully or whenever it benefits them, realize that was the wrong path and it may be too late to start over and start a family. Two, Black men have had enough and are literally walking away from the community, whether that be by leaving the country to start families or starting families in other communities here in America and investing their resources outside of the community. The women notice a change in men, but they do not want to change and refuse to do so in their pride. That's what I believe. Basically, to sum up everything, many Black women do respect their Black men and keep competing for leadership of the community. I wonder if he meant to put many Black women do not respect their Black men and keep competing for leadership of the community. I think that's what he meant to put there. There are a lot of different changing dynamics in the Black community. There are a lot of complicated things. We know there's been policies and there has been strategic acts from the government to pretty much put us in the place that we are at now. And so now it's kind of at the point where it's like outside sources don't necessarily really need to do anything. The self-destruction can happen completely and totally on its own. So I understand what he is saying. And for things to change, that would actually require enough women desiring to change and enough women desiring to maybe come back to the table and say, hey, maybe we need to rethink what's going on. Men too, but I do understand that if you've kind of after generations gotten the message of you're not needed, that at a certain point you just kind of stop caring. You're like, okay, well, I'm not needed. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. So, and you have some men who are literally doing that, So that says it's almost all of them that are angry, but honestly, it's most of them. I still wouldn't chance it with them though. Laughing emoji. Passports up. We don't care to the passport bro. Says maybe they are mentally ill and not angry. Yeah, I do. I do think undiagnosed mental illness runs rampant in the Black community, especially because there's still a lot of Black Americans who don't necessarily just have access to the best healthcare. That certainly plays a role. It says they're mad because no one wants them. There are plenty of Black men out there who still, with all of the stuff going on, would love them. A beautiful Black woman would love them. It doesn't always mean that the women are all interested. It doesn't always mean the interest is returned. Another one, it says they have these types of attitudes because there is always a group out there making excuses for said behavior, not to mention when all else fails, they can do what the rest of the world does and point the blame towards Black men. So it's the blame Black men. Black women get along with more with white women on the job than with their own sister. I've heard this. I have heard this before. I must say, when I was in corporate, I was always like the token in the corporate spaces. I was always like the Black, it seemed like, I don't say the diversity hire, but low-key felt like that. So, and where I've not had a ton of work opportunities where I was working with Black women, honestly. In corporate space, it was like a whole bunch of different white folks, or sometimes Asians or Hispanic, but I was always the Black one, almost always. So I can't speak for that specifically, but I've heard of other Black women say it's hard. But I've also heard of Black women say that they feel like other Black women are kind of advocates. So, context really does matter here. Part of the BS in this world, it says take care, low self-esteem, trauma. They're happy. They just trying to get the money up. It's a game. Okay. As a Black woman, what type of question is this? So I think this person was trying to questioning. Again, I like to ask questions because I don't have the answers to everything. I like to ask questions because I think there are certain topics they may be touchy, but they're relevant. And I may have a perspective, but my perspective is just one. I certainly don't have the full picture. So I think it's good to get feedback from other people sometimes to help get a fuller picture as to what could actually be going on. Okay, so those are the comments there. I'm going to go briefly with some of the feedback I got on Twitter, and then we can wrap this thing up. Okay, this one over here says the angry Black woman of America. He just laughed. This person's always in my comments laughing. Now, this one person gave a really interesting response. I'm actually wanting to do a separate video of it because it's a Black woman who basically says she does not like Black women, and she goes on to explain that she doesn't like Black women because she's like, y'all are hard to deal with. That's basically what she says. That might be a whole separate video. It's about 7 minutes long. Another one here, it says because they got to put the whole country world on their backs while simultaneously dealing with racism and sexism. As I mentioned before, there are legitimate reasons that Black women could have to be angry. legitimate. And I'm not one that demonizes anger in Black women or men. I think there needs to be places to express it in a healthy, balanced way. I'm not saying you get angry and shoot up folks, right? Like, or nothing crazy like that. But you have to have a place to express how you're feeling. But it's also important to know, what do you do with that anger, right? And then how do you move past it? Because you don't want to just stay angry. That's where it gets dangerous. To be just stay angry, internalize it, and continue to take it out on other folks, then it's not good. Here's one that says, because no one cares about them to be completely honest. Black women are used to the pretend, the empty gestures. But from my observation, when will there be a time where Black women can just live without expectation, without struggle, just living and existing as God intended? I thought that was a really interesting quote. The thing about it to me that stood out is that we have to remember the original intention of America. That was never for Black people, let alone Black women, to live a leisurely, carefree life. They were brought over as a utility. They weren't even humans. And then even after slavery, you understand, sharecropping and other different rules that basically kept Black folks out of positions of power and kept them a permanent working class. So that legacy still lives on today. I know some people like to point to the civil rights movement, which, if you actually understand the civil rights bill, how it basically disproportionately benefited white women, woo! And then Black women kind of got the trickle-down effect, right? But by and large, the Black community has still some challenges. And I'm saying that because the original intention of America was never for Black women to just be living a carefree life. That was not the intention. That does not mean Black women cannot individually have beautiful lives, and it doesn't mean that they can't still, marry and build things. At every step, in every generation of the Black experience in America, there's been some challenges. There has been some challenges with being Black, period, men and women. And so I think the more you can understand that, then the easier it is for you to understand, well, what's actually going on. I don't want to sound dystopian, but that was the intention. Now, I think, honestly, because the intention of America itself was never to necessarily empower the Black community, this is why I actually think it's up to the Black community to empower itself. This is why I think supporting one another and essentially building up one another is the way forward. That is that's a whole separate larger discussion. Now you're talking about nation building. You're talking about just really a whole other world that some people may not even be interested in. But to make a long story short, that was never the intention of America, of Black women being here to have the carefree life. So that doesn't mean that it can't happen here by and large, but we also have to understand this system was set up to kind of keep that from happening en masse. That's the best way I could put it. There's another one that says, why are Black American women so angry? 1, having to do everything alone. Poor choices in men, which leads to single motherhood. 3, lack of strong family support and structure. 4, childhood trauma. 5, trauma from bad partners. 6, having to grow up early and not have a childhood. 7, being a parent to their parents. 8, coming from a poor and disenfranchised state of life. 9, being a product of their environment, product of the hood. And 10, thinking that the way they grew up was normal. That was a mouthful. I don't even think that there's anything else I need to say there. One thing I will mention, I'm glad he touched on a lot, because it actually shows that it's a lot more dynamic, and it may be a little bit more complex than what we are saying. Now, here's why I brought this up. There's plenty of more comments, and if you want, you can go and check it out. But the reason I brought this up is not because I want to demonize or stereotype Black women, and it's not because I think Black women are horrible human beings that are unworthy of love or whatever. No. I actually think the way forward to healing, whether it be, even if it's just one person, even if like my conversation, it inspires one woman to do something better, to me, that's enough. Because I think if you can at least acknowledge or address what is hurting you, or what is really driving your anger, or those things, there might be multiple things, then at least there's a step in the right direction. At least there's a conversation to move forward, and you might actually get some healing, and you might actually be able to move on and to live a better life. Our bodies weren't meant to hold anger. We were not meant to hold and sustain that long term. After a while, it just can literally cause health issues, to my understanding. And so it can burden us in many ways. And I think that's why, if a person finds that they are easily angered, easily triggered, or whatever, it's better to deal with it. Because at least if you deal with it and you can address why, you might actually find that there are solutions that, once addressed, can help you live a more fulfilling life. Anyway, that's what I have. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. Also, if you haven't already, you can become a channel member for as little as $4.99, where you have access to exclusive content and members only live. You can also become a Patreon member, where we have other exclusive content, including conversations with my husband, where we generally just talk about things that I just can't talk on YouTube, and other exclusive live interviews, and this content you just won't find anywhere else. So check me out there, and thank you so much for listening if you've gotten this far, and we'll talk later, okay? Bye.